Hey guys, this is Shelby with the Rogers Public Library. So this week for Full Steam Ahead, I wanted to talk to you about mermaids and some of the animals that might have inspired stories about mermaids, right? So one of the most famous mermaid stories that you've probably read before, or maybe you've seen an adaptation of it, because there's a lot of different movies and plays based on it. It's The Little Mermaid. He's by a guy named Hans Christian Andersen. He wrote it he was Danish and he wrote it in the 19th century. But mermaid stories go back a lot longer than this, right? This is one of the earliest that I could find. It's not quite a story. What it is, it's a coin from the Seleucid Empire around 1000 BCE. So this is a guy named Demetrius on the face, and then on the tail side, it's a little fish with a human head, right? So basically a mermaid, right? It's a combination. It's a part human, part fish. There's different versions of the mermaid story where selkies are like sometimes human, they're sometimes seals. So it's not necessarily just fish, but it's like aquatic humans, right? Another early, I don't want to say that it's an early mermaid version of mermaids because it's kind of complicated, right? And that's sirens, right? So sirens are in Greek legends, right? Like the story of Odysseus, right, where they lure sailors to their deaths, right? They sing really nice songs and they're like, oh, let's go see them, and then it doesn't turn out well, right? And nowadays we often think about and portray sirens as being mermaids, but the Greeks didn't really do that, right? They thought of them more as being like ladies with wings or bird people. And even as late, this is from the Middle Ages, right? And you see that this siren has some fish-like features, right? It has a mermaid tail, but it also has wings, right? So there's kind of steps there, right? There's a lot of different mermaid stories. But in last week we talked about how there are also a lot of different dragon stories, right? And how these dragon stories can be connected to real animals or animals that used to live on the earth and have gone extinct. There aren't really any animals like mermaids, right? And that just has to do with evolution and biology, right? So one thing to keep in mind is that fish and mammals diverged evolutionarily 400 million years ago. That was a really, really long time ago. Because of that, just the fundamental biology of like fish and humans doesn't work out, right? So a mermaid, a creature that is part fish and part human, wouldn't be able to go to the bathroom, and they wouldn't be able to have babies. It wouldn't work out. And another thing is that the ocean is really cold, right? If you go down deep in the ocean, it's almost freezing. And so ocean-dwelling mammals need a lot of blubber, right? You think about whales, or you think about walruses. They have really thick layers of fat that protect them from the cold. If humans don't really have that, right? If a mermaid had human-like features, it would probably freeze. It wouldn't be able to survive ocean environments. So there's just kind of some sad biology facts that say mermaids aren't real. But one thing I did find was that there are documented mermaid sightings, there are documented instances of people seeing what they thought were mermaids but probably weren't. And this even includes one by Christopher Columbus, right? The guy who explored the Americas and the Caribbean. He actually wrote in his diary that he saw a mermaid, and that it was really, really ugly. But what he saw wasn't actually a mermaid. It was actually one of these guys, right? A West Indian manatee. These are manatees, along with dugongs, are members of the order Sirenia, right? So this is a group of herbivorous sea-dwelling mammals that get their name from sirens from Greek legends, right? Sometimes they're called sea cows, and that's because they eat a lot of plants. They like to eat seagrasses and seaweed and kind of like cows eat grass on land and plants, right? They tend to dwell near the coast and it's in warmer waters, right? So this is a distribution map, right? So the green is a West Indian manatees. They are the ones that are closest to us. They're all the ones close to the Floridas and in the Caribbean. There's also Amazonian manatees that live just in rivers and in lakes in South America. West African manatees that are over here on the western coast of Africa, and then dugongs are in the Pacific, and in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. There used to be another member of Sirenia that lived between Russia and the United States, Alaska, but it went extinct in the 18th century because it got overhunted. Yeah, but they're pretty cool, and one of the reasons, or some possible reasons for why people confuse manatees with mermaids, is that they have really human eyes, is one thing. Another thing is that, if you see a manatee from far away, right, you might think it's a person just because of the way that they stick their heads up against the water and the way that manatees hold their babies. But anyway, so I thought for our craft for this week, we would make a little manatee mermaid. Right, so this is one that I made in advance. I just colored it in. I drew a little bit of seagrass, and then I gave it this nice tail. I'm going to show you guys how I did that, right? So this is the picture. You can pick one of these up at the library and do this craft yourself. And if you noticed, I made this based on this picture here of the West Indian manatee. I just traced over it. And that's a picture from NASA. So I'm just going to color it purple because I think, they're like grayish, but I think it looks cooler to use purple. It's a little bit prettier. And I'm just coloring the manatee here because it would take a really long time to color the entire page and draw a nice scene like I have on the other manatee. So it's not quite between the lines, but that's okay. You got the hard part out of the way. Now I'm gonna get some glue, and I'm gonna just layer it on. It does not need to be super thick, just a kind of a thin layer. I'm actually gonna spread it out with a brush. And that's because if you put too much glue on, it'll kind of clump up and it might mess up your page a little bit, right? Because it's cardstock, but it's not super thick. All right, so now we have glue over the tail, and we're gonna put some glitter on. Okay, so we made a big mess with glitter. If we can get some sequins on. I should have put the sequins on first. So here we go. This is our mermaid. It doesn't have a lot of sequins on because I messed up, but it does have a lot of glitter. So now it has a little glittery mermaid tail. And that's all there is to it, right? Like I said before, you can add extra details if you want, and you don't have to use markers. You can use crowns or colored pencils. It's up to you. But that's what I had for you guys this week. I hope you guys had fun, and I'll see you next time.